How has the week been? It has been, for me, a truly, truly amazing week. I hope you have had um, a great week yourself. Um, I think today, what I would like us to explore a bit more. Sorry, my setup trying to play with a couple of changes. Um, this is worse like this. Uh, Let me see. It's better. Okay, I think this is hopefully a lot better. Um, I think one of the most interesting thing I wanted us to kind of explore and talk a little bit today is about growing pains. Um, what I have found is that a lot of we actually talk a lot about wanting growth, and a lot of the time we don't spend enough time thinking about and talking about the how growth, what that means in that sense. Growth will stretch you in ways that you've never really thought about or you've not imagined. And this week, I think I can say that I grew. I grew in ways that I didn't even know was possible. And I think it's the same thing that I mentioned like the previous week about the kind of growth personally, and even in terms of like the stretch in terms of capacity that I experienced, and even the team that I worked with experienced when um, during the time of COVID. You know, and a lot of the time what I see is a lot of people pray that they want to be really, they want to like see a lot of things happen in their life. They want to grow, they want to see their finances improve. But the amount of work and how that will stretch you. And even when we pray for grace, it also will mean that your faith would most times be stretched, and your capacity to trust will be stretched fundamentally in a way that is very different from what you are used to. And I think that's one of the things that I'm having to pause to reflect a lot more on around the growth. And I was telling a couple of a founder that I was speaking with this week, because I've been speaking with a couple of founders over the last couple of days, that the most interesting thing I see is that a lot of the time people pray for and plan for growth, but if you do not build the right structure or the right systems in place, the growth that you are envisaging could actually even could break you. You know, um, there's a lot of people that they failed. People can actually fail because of they were too successful. If that makes any sense, right? Where the success that they are praying for, that they are hoping for, they are working really hard comes, but they do not have the right systems or they do not have the right structures to be able to then manage that success. Again, we've seen this even in personal scenarios, even in corporate scenarios, where the business didn't die from anything else, it died from too much success and not having the right structure to manage that success. And so, one of the things that I am learning and being very intentional about a lot of things now, I'm trying to put, and somebody said it really perfectly that we rise and fall to the level of our systems, the systems around our lives. So, both whether it is in your business, whether it is in your personal life, a lot of um, the amount of progress or the level of growth you experience is a function of the systems that you've put in place. So do you have the right systems in place to sustain that growth? Are you ready? Are you ready for the success that you are praying for, that you're working really hard for? If the if all of those customers, if you the 10,000 customers that you want suddenly sign up to your products, do you have does your platform able to support those users? You know, will your team be able to your customer support be able to manage the request that comes from that? Again, a lot of people pray and hope and wish and want all of that great inflow to come in, but when it does come in, does your system is your system able to manage them? You know, because if not, what you end up happening is not that. Oh yeah, you will see. We've seen it multiple times. A lot of that brand that gets really hyped, great announcement, and then a couple of months later they are dead. And they died not because they were not great opportunities or great businesses. They died because the systems or the structures in place were not able to sustain that success that they've achieved. So if there's anything I will say, I think a lot deeply, a lot more about now is how do you put the right systems in place for the success that you are hoping for? How do you ensure that you have the right structure to support the growth that you want? Um, and there, that's something that is giving me a lot of like pause to reflect on, even in our personal life, you know. Um, so I don't know what you're thinking about, what you're dealing with, or how you are evolving and thinking through your own growth journey. Growth is going to be painful, you know. But one of the beautiful things I've also seen is that it's going to be worth it. Um, every single time I've gone through a phase of a new growth phase, it has always been extremely worth it. It has built me in a way that have made me a lot more resilient across board, across a lot of the things that I do. And that has been truly, truly a remarkable experience personally, you know. But yeah, it is going to be painful, but it's going to be worth it. And it's going to shape you in ways that you won't even be able to envisage in the moment. And I think one of the things as well that that process teaches you is teaching you to trust more and to leap a lot more, you know, where you are not waiting for a perfect set of conditions and you become more comfortable saying yes, you know. A lot of people are not comfortable. They want all of, again, I think we talked about this earlier, where you're waiting for a perfect set of conditions before you take that next step. But part of that growth and that process is jumping and trusting the process. You know, um, I remember a few weeks ago I just launched something that I'm working with a couple of founders over the next couple of weeks, and someone reached out to me and was like, "Oh, I read your New Year article review and I signed up for it." Well, before then I wasn't taking it seriously, but then I went and I was like, "Oh, this is really interesting," considering that the person filled the form. And I think I kind of announced this in a couple of groups that I wanted to work with a lot of founders to kind of help them unlock that growth phase. Because I noticed that a lot of founders that I was speaking to were stuck in a cycle where they were ever building product, but it wasn't really there wasn't any uplift for those products essentially. And it was interesting as well because close to like 50 founders applied for that before I quickly closed it, which was really because I was like, oh shit, that's a lot. But the interesting thing was also just speaking with most of these founders over the last few days has been really, really insightful. And again, in proper startup fashion, when I announced that even before I started taking the first call, I hadn't fully fleshed out like how I wanted the process to run, but I knew that it was something I wanted to do. But the moment that started happening and with each conversation, I started getting even a lot more clarity personally around how I wanted the program to run, what were common themes I was seeing founders were struggling with that I had also faced those challenges and in some sense been able to deal with some of those problems and then kind of figuring out, okay, you know what, these are like things and pathways that it makes sense to structure the program around. And so in the famous words of Nike is go and just do it. Stop overthinking the matter. Stop trying to wait for that perfect set of conditions. Get started. It becomes clearer as you go. It is going to be stressful. The amount of calls I had to take with founders, most times back to back to back in the week, was relatively very intense. With all of the other things I also had to do, but it's been worth it in every shape of and form because I've had to learn about what the amazing and incredible things that people are building across different parts of the world. Um, and hopefully help them start thinking about how they approach their innovation a little bit differently. And so that's something I'm really excited to be working with them over the next couple of months. And with those conversations within the week, it has even brought a lot of clarity for me around how that will shape and what that will shape into over the next couple of months. And that's something as well that I think is going to be really exciting. There are a couple of really, really interesting initiatives that I'm kind of wanting to build out of that over time. But I think, again, going back is every single time I think about all of these things, I'm like, holy hell, Francis, you're taking quite on a lot. But again, it is just like the way the Bible would describe it that he that the man that is given a lot, much is given to, much is expected of him. Paraphrasing, obviously, but and I've been very fortunate. I'm really, really blessed that I have received a lot from people. I've been blessed by God immensely, um, and I feel like, yeah, it only makes sense to kind of figure out how do you share that, so again, so that people do not make the same mistakes or do not can avoid a lot of those same mistakes and kind of accelerate their own journey in that sense. So yeah, I think that's fundamentally it, right? I think the biggest thing in all of this, my rambling, is growth is a painful process. Growth will stretch you, but when you are going through that journey, remember why. You know, do not lose your why. I think that's the biggest thing that keeps me through the days where it feels like it is very, very intense. Do not lose your why. Why did you start? Why did you start that project? Why did you start that business? Why did you start that initiative? Holding on to your why will make it worthwhile when you go through that very intense and stressful process. And hopefully, be- leading up to it, if you're able to, you would have built certain systems that can help you manage and go through that and not break from the process. But if not, hopefully as well, you're able to rise up to the occasion and quickly build the process or build the system on the fly. As I would usually joke with my friend that building a company or building a startup is like jumping off a plane and then building up, kind of compiling your parachutes right on the way down. And then again, your survival is based on the fact of how well and how quickly you're able to put together all of that resource in record time before you hit the ground. And then if you're able to do it, fantastic. You live to keep fighting. But if not, you know, and yeah, again, if you're able to build that systems, what you will then realize is that your capacity, you will be amazed to realize that of what you are capable of. I think that's one of the biggest things I've seen about going through those good growth curves, is the realization where if where you then real when you see that you are able to do it much more than you thought you could possibly do. You know, um, you're able to push yourself to certain limits you didn't even think you could push yourself to. You know, and the moment you go through that, certain there's something that there's a mental reset that happens, and you're like, huh, okay, this is interesting because again, if that situation presents itself again, you approach it very differently because you know you have gone through something similar, and you know that, yeah, it's just a phase. I can deal with it. I've gone through something similar. I can weather it. You know, it might even be more intense than the previous one, but it kind of sets you and makes you a lot more comfortable and confident when you are weathering or when you are going through that growth spurt, because you know that, okay, yeah, it's going to be intense, it's going to be difficult, but um, as long as I stay grounded, I'm able to kind of push through it and come out on the other side of it. So the long and short of this is that growth is going to be painful. Again, it is only I have never really seen any part of that journey when it involves us growing in certain shape or form that wasn't necessarily painful or intense. Maybe the word is maybe intense, not necessarily painful every single time. And even if it is like, oh, there's the parts obviously like, oh, grace, but it also mean and require you trusting on a deeper level, you know, in ways that you would not have probably done before. You know, I've been reading the story of Job over the last couple of days, and it's so interesting because again, you think about it like what Job went through and how he lost everything, and like again, and just still trusting and still believing and still being very consistent to that vision. You know, again, I think it kind of also most resonates to what we were talking about last week about seeing a founder that stuck and believed in a dream for 10 years, you know. And again, it is almost, some people it's just mental. People will tell you, like, it doesn't make any sense, you know. They'll literally call you mad, like, it doesn't make sense. And as somebody will say, the people that change the world are people that you have to see the world a bit differently. And maybe in some sense, people that change the world are a little bit nuts, because you have to believe that there's something different. There is something, it can be better, it can be different, and have the strength, even when the whole world, when everybody else says that doesn't make sense or that doesn't, it's not going to work, to stay committed, to stay focused, to drive through and weather the storms and see it to the other side until where the world comes to your side and say, oh yeah, and then they start calling you a visionary, you know. And so whatever the project, the initiative you're going through, whatever that growth spot you're going through, where it feels really painful, it feels really intense, I just want to tell you, stay grounded. It's just a phase. You're going to get through it. You're going to come out on the other end of it. And when you look back, you'll be glad that you went through this phase, even though it doesn't feel like it now, even though it feels really, really intense, it feels really, really stressful. But if you can stay grounded and stay focused and keep grounded on your why and keep holding on to that why, and then start figuring out how do you consistently build the systems that can make sure that you do not cater to the pressure or the intensity um, of that growth demand. You'll be amazed at what that story and that journey will look like in the next couple of weeks or the next couple of months. Because yes, there are a lot of people that failed because of they did a lot of things wrong, but I've also seen people that failed because growth came, success came, and they were not ready and they were not prepared for success. So that's the big musing I've been having um, over the last couple of days. I know I've been, again, today was actually supposed to switch the format in proper startup fashion. I'm fighting with my my current designer to actually create a couple of like um, the creatives that is needed for that, but by next week that should completely change. But yeah, happy to hear how have you what have been some hacks or mechanisms or process you've actually adopted personally to help you stay grounded, to help you stay focused when you're going through those growth spur or growth moments. How have you ensured, what are some of the things that you do or you've done to ensure that as you go through those growth cycles, you do not buckle under the stress and the intensity that comes with it? I'd like to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your comments. And then, yeah, again, like I say, building our dreams, building what we are doing is we are like on the war front, is like on the front line of this war front. And my goal is for us to keep talking and having conversations about the interesting, challenging, and weird bits of that journey and how we navigate that process altogether. So that again, it is not people then look. It's not the story of oh, it was an overnight success, but people most times don't understand the difficulty, the challenges, the strain that is happening behind the scene for those success that looks like overnight stories. So hopefully that is what we'll get to talk a lot more in the coming weeks. Just discussing all of the murky details of how it is or what it means to build the business that everybody looks at like, oh, it looks so beautiful, but you know the pressure and the pain and the struggle you had to deal with to make that happen. You know. So yeah, I do hope you have or you've had an amazing week, and I wish you a great week ahead. Um, cheers, everyone.